Welcome to PlanStrongerTV. I'm your host, David Holland. Do you sometimes struggle with financial decisions? Are you unsure about your finances right now? Guess what? You are not alone, and there's a reason for that. Money is weird. From a human evolutionary standpoint, money is like nothing else, and our primitive brains sometimes have trouble with it. Luckily for us, I'm joined on today's program by Dr. Art Markman for his insights into money. Let's roll. All right, welcome back, and I'm very pleased to bring to the program Dr. Art Markman. Art, good to see you.
It's good to be here.
Glad to have you. So I've got quite a mouthful for the proper introductions. Here we go. So Dr. Markman is the Annabelle Iron Worsham Centennial Professor of Psychology and Marketing, University of Texas at Austin. So far, so good? Okay.
Welcome.
Ph.D. in Psychology for University of Illinois. Dr. Artman also is the author of the book, Smart Thinking, 3 Essential Keys to Solve Problems, Innovate, and Get Things Done. And also along with Dr. Bob Duke, he hosts the program, Two Guys on Your Head. It's a podcast and also available on several radio shows and stations. So we've done radio together. It's good to be with you in person.
Yeah, that's right. It's a lot of fun.
All right, well, excellent. So listen, you got to save me here because I started the program with telling the audience that they have primitive brains.
Yeah.
But in the scheme of human evolution and how our brains work today, from my reading and my understanding, our brains don't really work that differently than they did a couple thousand or 10,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, first of all, if you think about it, the way evolution works is that we take the basic mechanisms and then we build stuff on top of it.
Okay.
So all of the really sophisticated abilities that we have to reason, to tell stories about things, they're actually built on top of all of the same machinery that deer and rats and mice have. And deep down, a lot of what motivates us is still those kinds of basic needs that are motivating all of these other animals. And so the fact that we can then tell great stories about it doesn't change the way that we react to things.
Okay, so we may have this really sophisticated, hardwired brain, but now we are adding this concept of money.
Right.
And this is where our primitive brains can get us in a lot of trouble. That machinery that you've described is built to protect us, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so, but then when you bring in this abstract concept for a lot of people of money, how do our wires get crossed? Why doesn't it work?
Right. So think about what happens. So money is this great concept in which instead of having to trade things, so you're going to give me 3 goats for 12 bushels of corn or something.
Right.
Now we have this uniform kind of currency that we can use across every transaction. Now that's fantastic, but that brain, that motivational brain deep inside, it's still dealing with what's here and now.
Right.
And so it doesn't really understand those abstract concepts. And so now, if there's something you really want in this moment, now the money doesn't really compute on that, which is why people may overspend for something they really want. On the other hand, when something goes wrong, now they just want to run away from it, which is a great thing to do if it's a tiger.
Right, right.
But if it's a market loss or something like that, running away may not be such a great reaction, and yet your motivational system is still trying to get you to do the same thing. And that's where that incompatibility comes in, and that's where you really need to slow yourself down. Because one of the things about the way that the brain works is that this motivational set of centers, it operates really quickly.
To get you out of trouble.
Right. So it gives you an immediate reaction. So that gut reaction, which can be so useful in many situations, is often going to lead you astray when it comes to things related to money. That's where you need to slow down, because that impulse purchase, I want it now, may be incompatible with your long-term goals for money. And those things that are frightening you may also create reactions that keep you from doing the right thing. So whenever it comes to money, one of the things you want to do is just slow down.
All right, takeaway number one, slow down your decision making when it relates to your money. And you beat me to it, and I'll put the label on it because I was going to ask you about the fight or flight response that our primitive brain, that I kind of think of it like a core. You use the idea of the things being layered on.
Yeah.
So this core brain's going to react very quickly, get us out of dodge, get us out of trouble. We're either going to fight or fly and get out of there. But if we slow down, does that give our higher thinking, our frontal cortex, these massive, wonderful lobes up front, chance to work?
Yeah, so it does two things. The first is, so here we have this urge to run away from whatever it is because we're frightened by something that's going on. So the first thing that happens is the frontal lobes of your brain, sort of the stuff that's above your eyes, what happens with that is it inhibits, it stops that impulse to run away. Now that gives you a chance to think a little bit more before you act, and now you can begin to tell a story about what the right thing to do is. But if you just give into it and you run away, then you're prone to do the wrong thing.
So it's like an override system almost.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, that makes sense. Well, and that brings me to my next question, which is, why do we make such emotional decisions? And my perfect example I've been waiting to ask you about, and it's a little bit of this reactionary thing, is when people see advertisements or they're pitched on the idea of gold being like a solution to their insecurity, that people then react, pick up the phone, and they order the 10 ounces of gold or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I guess first, why do we do it, and how can we slow that down and make better decisions?
Well, so it turns out that those emotional decisions that we make are often really good ones. So for example, imagine what happens when you go to a party and you meet somebody and that little spidey sense goes off.
Yeah.
If this person's a little off, they're usually a little off. If you override
I've got that a lot.
and you keep talking to them, yeah, I get that to people doing that to me. But and so in that situation, actually, you're getting a pretty good emotional read on something. It's really money that is causing the problem because it's such a weird abstract concept. And so when it comes to money, we do need to override that. And so now let's think about gold, for example. Usually when people flock to gold, it's because there's uncertainty in the markets, there's uncertainty in the political situation. And so now we think this thing that has had value for centuries is still going to have value now. And so what do? We think, I just want to remove that sense of stress.
Right.
And so, and stress is your motivational system saying to you, there's something out there that you should be scared of. And so what you want to do in a stressful situation is to retreat to a comfortable place. And what those ads do very well is to pitch to that, to say gold is your safe harbor in this stormy situation. And so now what do? You think, finally, I know what to do. I can get my money out of that risky stock market and put it into gold. Right. And now I could feel better about it. And whenever I need it, I could go to my safe deposit box and look at my gold.
Hold it and look at it.
There it is, and it's so shiny.
And then, of course, the next part of this is after you've gotten through that emotional state, and you go, okay, now what? I have this gold. How will I now sell it? Do I, take my knife and cut a little piece off and buy stuff with it? I mean, it becomes very impractical.
Yeah, yeah. So part of the problem is that because money's really abstract, we love specific things that we could own. And the beauty of gold as a concept is it's a thing. Right. It's right there. And so a lot of people don't realize that creating transaction costs is not a great idea. True. And so, the markets have done a great job of creating exchanges that minimize transaction costs. So it's not that hard to get in and out of the market. Right. But with gold, now I have a thing. I mean, so let's not think of gold for a second. Let's imagine that what I did instead was to buy a Mercedes to protect myself from the markets. Now I've got a car that I have to hold on to, keep polished, and at some point convince somebody to pay for that car what I paid for it or more. And once you realize that owning gold isn't really that much different than just owning a big old car, then you begin to realize, wait a second, this isn't as easy as I thought it was.
I suppose we can be our own worst enemy when it comes to financial decisions because of this emotional component. So how do you see people kind of creating that, I guess, give it time, but also that buffer? Now, from my standpoint, it's easy for me to say, look, having a financial advisor is a good buffer because at least there's somebody there that may say, look, hold on, let's get those frontal lobes firing and think about what you're doing, and maybe now is not the best time. Let's talk through why you want to sell or get out of the market.
Yeah, and I think that you're raising two really important points. The first is it's often really helpful to have a second person involved of any kind when you're making big decisions that relate to money. So for example, if you're going to buy a car, bring a friend with you. Someone who's going to tell you, you know what, that's a little expensive, and they don't have a vested interest. So they don't see that car as the thing they have to have at this moment.
That's true.
And so having that person, that second person there to talk about it, to make everything a little bit more abstract, because at the point where you have to talk about it with somebody, that's the point at which you actually have to leave that motivational brain and get back into those brain centers that are good at storytelling. So just having a second person there, that's one piece. Then there's a second piece, which is money is complicated. You know, yes, we've all got some, you know, in our pockets or in our bank accounts, but we don't necessarily know how it works. And if you think about it, right, I don't do my own plumbing. Right, with good reason, you know. And I don't. There are lots of things I don't do for myself. I don't take care of my own health care. I find people who have expertise related to whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish. So on top of the value of having just somebody that you can talk to about things, finding people with expertise who understand cycles in the market, who have a sense of the context of what's going on, who understand which investments are likely to be good or bad ones, having those people around to provide that expertise is yet a second benefit. And I think having both of those is really cool.
I think you're right on, and I think that neutrality you're talking about with the person that comes along and help you make a decision with somebody who can actually guide you on your finances, actually their neutrality is a little bit of a bias toward what's best for you, because the more money you make, the better you do, the more you'll tell your friends, the more you'll put more money with them, and so there's a definite incentive for them to guide you and help you from making some of these maybe impulsive or bad decisions, and helping them make good choices. And the other thing I want to follow up on and have you hit on is when we want to make a purchase or we want to do something, we've already made the decision to do it, right? And a lot of times we then say, well, now it's time for me to collect the support and justify what I'm doing.
Yeah, so we love people who are just going to say yes to us, right? And people will shop around for opinions, right? I bought a new house about 3.5 years ago, and the guy who sold the house to us, he thought he had a house worth way more than he actually did. He actually shopped realtors until he found one who was willing to list the house at the price he wanted to list it for, and it then sat for over a year until he came down to the point where the market was. So he was shopping around looking for that opinion that he'd already formed. And I think what people have to do if they're going to ask for expert advice is actually to go and say, look, I have some prior beliefs, but I'm going to have to trust your beliefs and integrate those as well, and actually be willing to change my mind. Because if not, if you're really not willing to change your mind, then actually getting a second person involved is only going to be frustrating for you.
And to kind of take that point one step further is that there are these myths or misconceptions out there that, you know, that are commonly held and I think used to a large degree to kind of justify behavior, especially when it comes to our money. And one of them, which is a couple of my favorites here, Art, is, well, everybody lost money, so it's okay.
Right. Well, so we love to live in the crowd. I mean, it's sort of like when you're driving in traffic. You're just happy that you're ahead of this car that was that was ahead of you a while back. The fact that it's taking you an hour to get where you're going, which is the real thing that matters, you don't pay attention to that. It's all relative to what's going on around you. And I think it's important for you to recognize that what matters at the end of the day is the state of your finances at the end of either a particular downturn or a particular uptick in the market. Don't be paying attention to how you're doing relative to other people. There's a real tendency that psychologists call social comparison. And social comparison almost always gets you in trouble.
How about that?
So you know, if I look around and I say, well, everyone else lost money, but I lost less money, right? I'm making what's called a downward social comparison.
I'm doing so much better.
Yeah, it makes me feel good, but I just lost money, right? And likewise, if I make upward social comparisons, then I feel bad about things, which is why it's funny. You know, realtors tell you that the best thing from a value standpoint is to own the smallest house in an expensive neighborhood. It turns out from a happiness standpoint, it's actually best to own the biggest house in a less expensive neighborhood because now every other house you see isn't as nice as yours.
So it's a challenge of money versus happiness,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, pick one.
Well, so kind of in the same vein, I think there's a natural tendency, and we'll go ahead and speak to the obvious, that when it comes to money, people, especially if they're looking at what other people are doing, there's a tendency to make knee-jerk reactions or even, dare I say it, try to time the markets or try to outsmart and think that we are better, stronger, faster than everybody else, and we're going to somehow parlay that into some big windfall.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things about human behavior is we react to what's happening right now, which, again, makes sense if there's the potential for tigers in the environment. There's a tiger, run away. Or if there's some really great food and you're a hunter-gatherer, man, grab that. You need it right now. The funny thing about markets is that they really are much longer-term plays. So, and we're not good at that. So the thing about the market is, if you're going to get involved in the market, you're doing that not because you're going to game this for 3 weeks, but because you have an anticipation that there's going to be growth over a period of time that could be years or several years, which psychologically is not something we're particularly good at. And so we want to act.
Right.
We want to act, we want to jump in when we think things are going to be good, we want to jump out when things are going to be bad, and what we need to do instead is to recognize we're playing a much longer game, and that what happens day to day is far less important than this longer term trend. And that's why, you know, a financial advisor, for example, sits down and shows you all these graphs. The reason that those graphs are important is because they're trying to show you information that you would never pay attention to yourself.
That's true.
Trends over a year, 5 years, 10 years. 10 years?
Right.
Really? But you need that information in order to be able to make better decisions because the human brain just doesn't deal with things on
Now,
that
they're thinking about
timescale.
what's for dinner tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking about a 10-year graph. Are you crazy?
Right.
But we've got to get them to think that way because there is that instinctual thing to take an action today. And it's funny you mentioned again about the advisor's role. And one of the things that I've try to help people do is to understand that working with an advisor, my job is the same whether the stock market's going up 20% or down 20%. And that baffles everybody because they think that if the market's going up, don't touch it, it's working, but when it goes down, do something. Right,
exactly. And really, it's all about how are you doing relative to the context, the situation. So when the market's going up, yes, you're making money, but you could be making more money, right? Or you might be on top of the hill. And likewise, when the market's going down, if the market's going down, you might still be doing better than most other people in the market because of the particular collection of investments you have.
Sure.
There's a case where it really is relative to the market, but not relative to everybody else. And again, unless you have expertise, you have no idea how to evaluate that.
Well, and I have to break it to the audience. I know this is going to be a real shock for them. People lie about their performance. Your friends won't always tell you the truth about how they're doing. You know, they'll tell you about the successes, but they'll seemingly somehow overlook, I forgot to tell you about the one where I lost my shirt. Because why? Because we want to feel good, and when we want other people to think we're smart.
We are the heroes of our own life story.
That's true. We script it and rewrite it as we go.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it's really not a good idea to be making those kinds of decisions on the basis of the stories you're hearing. And that's why you need the information.
Well, the information's key, and I'm so glad you could come and be with us, Dr. Art Markman, ladies and gentlemen, helping us understand just a little bit more about how the markets work and how we react to them. And I thank you, and I'm so glad we got a chance to finally meet in person.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming to Daytona Beach in the studios here.
Absolutely.
Very good. Okay, it's time for the scoop. This is the part of the program where I answer financial questions that I think you'd like to ask but haven't. So let's get to it. How can I build up my credit? Well, there's lots of different ways to do that, but I'll give you a simple, maybe an overview of a process to go about building your credit. In the beginning, when we have income and we don't have a lot of debt and we're maybe just starting out, having a job, having that regular paycheck will show that you have financial resources. And so when you apply for your first credit card or maybe it's a car loan, having the income and then having reasonable expenses with your income allows then that credit card company or the lender for your car to extend you credit. So you can buy that And then by paying it back over time, you are demonstrating that you are a good credit risk, that you are a good risk for that issuer of debt, that you have an asset you've purchased, or maybe it's like a credit card where it's an unsecured debt. You've shown responsibility in your ability to pay that back. All of that translates to a credit score. So when people talk about how can I build up my credit, it's talking about building up my credit score, building up the ability to borrow larger amounts in the future for something else. Now, if you have a certain amount of income and you have debts or you have obligations or you have living expenses that you're just making all that work, you're just meeting your needs, then a lender is going to be reluctant to give you more money, to let you further extend yourself. So building up credit is all about borrowing, being able to pay things back, and doing it over time. You actually end up, I think, having better credit if you borrow the money, pay it back like you're supposed to, as opposed to maybe paying it off quicker. Now, still have to consider interest that you pay and whether or not it's good to pay something off quicker. But if we're talking about strictly building up credit, then borrowing and paying back, making the payments, everything on time, all of those are positive things that affect your credit and your credit score. Now, a related question is, does my credit score matter when I retire? Well, the short answer is yes. I mean, you still may need to borrow. You might refinance your house. You might take out a line of credit. You might look at a reverse mortgage line of credit or some other type of loan that you may still need a good credit score for. So some people get to retirement, maybe they don't have any debt. Maybe they say, hey, look, I've worked hard, I've saved, I've paid everything off, I've done all the things you're supposed to do. I don't really need to borrow any more money, so what do I care about my credit score? Well, but you might. See, so it does still matter, and we can't see around corners, right? So we don't know what may come down the road. There might be a financial product or a loan or something down the road that you need or that is attractive that doesn't exist today. You might need that credit or that credit score at that point. Now, I want to switch over to a completely different subject away from credit scores and talk a minute about taxes. I get this question a lot, and this is I should probably do a top 5 questions or misconceptions that people have. This is a big one. How much money can you give away without paying tax? Once upon a time, the limits used to be pretty low and how much you could give away without paying taxes. So what we're talking about is a gift to a family member or a friend, and the question is, am I going to have to pay taxes on that? How much can I do? Under the tax laws that exist at the time I'm doing this program, you can give away $14,000 a year to as many people as you want. You don't pay tax, they don't pay tax. Now, that's just a start. In addition to that annual amount you can do, we also have a credit that's a lifetime credit for when you die, but also during your lifetime for either leaving money or giving money. And that number, again, under current tax law at the time I do this program, that's over $5 million per person. So if you want to give away money, there's really, unless you are ultra wealthy and you want to give a lot away, there's no taxes. So once upon a time, yeah, it was a lower number, but if you want to give money to people, there really aren't a lot of tax considerations. There are some government filings, there's some forms to file, depending on the amount you give, but it's not a big deal anymore. It used to be, but not anymore. And the final thing I want to get to today is, can IRAs be joint accounts? If not, why not? Well, IRAs are individual retirement accounts. You know, the names of some of these things give it away. An IRA is an individual retirement account. It's structured for an individual person, just like a 401k or 403b, some of these other accounts. So it can't be joint. You can leave it to your spouse if you die. If you get divorced, there's a mechanism for splitting IRAs or giving it to the ex-spouse. But in general, IRAs can't be joint because of the tax code and the way it's written. Hope you like these questions. That's your scoop for today.
If you would like more information about the topics and our guests featured in this series, please visit our website at PlanStrongerTV.com. Also, if you have a question you would like David to answer, please send it to questions@PlanStrongerTV.com.